August 6th, 1945. At 8:15 in the morning, the sky above Hiroshima tore open. A flash of light, brighter than 1,000 suns, instantly vaporized everything within a 1-mile radius. Shadows of people were permanently burned into the stone pavements where they had been standing just a millisecond before. The shockwave that followed flattened the city in a heartbeat, turning tens of thousands of human lives into ash. Most people who saw that blinding, unnatural light never lived to tell the story. But one man did. He saw the flash. He felt the heat. He survived the absolute end of the world. And then, impossibly, 3 days later, he went to work, just in time to see the end of the world happen again. This is the story of a man who looked the apocalypse in the eye, twice, and walked away. To understand the sheer statistical impossibility of this story, we have to travel back to the summer of 1945. Tsutomu Yamaguchi was a 29-year-old naval engineer. He worked for Mitsubishi Heavy Industries, designing oil tankers. He had a wife, Hisako, and a baby boy named Katsutoshi waiting for him at home. But Yamaguchi wasn't at home. He had been sent on an extended 3-month business trip to a major industrial hub, the city of Hiroshima. It was Monday, August 6th. This was supposed to be Yamaguchi's final day in the city. His bags were packed. His assignment was over. All he had to do was stop by the Mitsubishi shipyard one last time to get his travel stamp, and then he could finally board a train and go back to his family. As he was walking toward the shipyard, he heard the faint, high-pitched drone of an airplane engine. He looked up into the clear, blue summer sky. High above, cruising at over 30,000 feet, was a single American B-29 bomber, the Enola Gay. Yamaguchi watched as 2 small parachutes dropped from the plane. He didn't know it, but those parachutes were carrying scientific instruments, dropped just moments before the main payload. And then came the Pika, the flash. It was an explosion of pure, blinding white light. It was as if a piece of the sun had been suddenly teleported into the middle of the city. Yamaguchi, standing just 2 miles from ground zero, barely had a fraction of a second to react. His naval training kicked in. He immediately dove into a nearby irrigation ditch, covering his eyes and plugging his ears with his thumbs. A split second later came the dawn. The deafening, earth-shattering boom. The shockwave hit him with the force of a hurricane made of fire. He was lifted out of the ditch, spun violently in the air like a rag doll, and slammed back into the dirt in a nearby potato patch. When he finally opened his eyes, the world as he knew it had ceased to exist. The sky, which had been bright blue just a moment before, was now pitch black. A massive, terrifying pillar of swirling smoke and fire was rising into the stratosphere, blocking out the sun. A rain of thick, radioactive black ash began to fall over the ruins. Yamaguchi's face and forearms were severely burned. His eardrums were ruptured. He was temporarily blinded by the flash. But he was alive. He stumbled through the apocalyptic landscape. The city of Hiroshima had been erased. Buildings were flattened into a sea of smoldering charcoal. He walked past melted streetcars, fires raging out of control, and scenes of unimaginable horror. People wandering like ghosts, their skin hanging off them in strips. But Yamaguchi had only one thought burning in his mind. He had to get home. He had to see his wife and his baby boy. He eventually found 2 of his colleagues who had also miraculously survived. Together, they spent the night in an air raid shelter. The next morning, they heard a rumor that the train station, somehow, was still operating. To get there, they had to cross a river. The bridges had been destroyed. The water was clogged with the bodies of those who had desperately tried to cool their burns. Yamaguchi had to swim through this nightmare, pushing aside the dead, just to reach the other side. Incredibly, he made it to the station. He boarded a train packed with hundreds of burned, traumatized, and dying survivors. The train ride took an agonizing, sleepless night. But finally, on August 8th, Yamaguchi arrived at his destination, his hometown, the city of Nagasaki. He was heavily bandaged, in excruciating pain, and deaf in one ear. When he finally reached his house, his mother thought she was looking at a ghost. He was so badly burned and disfigured that his own family barely recognized him. He was rushed to the local hospital to have his burns treated and his wounds cleaned. The doctors told him to rest. He had survived an ordeal that defied human comprehension. But Tsutomu Yamaguchi was a man of intense duty. He was an engineer. He had a job to do. The next morning, Thursday, August 9th, Yamaguchi got out of bed. Despite his severe injuries, despite the fact that his body was covered in thick white bandages, he put on his clothes and reported for work at the Mitsubishi corporate office in Nagasaki. It was 11 a.m. Yamaguchi was standing in his director's office. His boss was demanding a full report. Yamaguchi tried to explain the unexplainable. He described the blinding flash, the heat, the fact that a single solitary bomb had wiped an entire massive city off the face of the earth in a matter of seconds. His boss looked at him with sheer disbelief. He thought the trauma had driven Yamaguchi insane. "You're an engineer, Yamaguchi," his boss said. "Calculate it. How could one single bomb destroy a whole city? That is mathematically impossible." And at that exact, precise moment, the room was flooded with a blinding, familiar white light. The Pika. Yamaguchi threw himself to the floor. Outside, the B-29 bomber boxcar had just dropped Fat Man, a plutonium implosion-type bomb that was significantly more powerful than the uranium bomb dropped on Hiroshima. The explosion ripped through Nagasaki. The Mitsubishi office building was decimated. Windows shattered, walls collapsed, and a shock wave sent flying glass and debris everywhere. Yamaguchi's bandages were blown right off his body. He was, once again, roughly 2 miles from ground zero. But this time, the hilly terrain of Nagasaki shielded him from the absolute worst of the thermal radiation. For the second time in 3 days, Tsutomu Yamaguchi had survived a nuclear blast. But his immediate thought wasn't of his own survival. It was of his family. He had left his wife and his baby at home. If the bomb had destroyed the Mitsubishi office, what had it done to his neighborhood? He rushed out of the ruined building and ran through the burning city of Nagasaki. He was terrified of what he would find. When he finally reached the location of his house, his heart sank. The house was completely destroyed, reduced to rubble. But then a miracle. He found his wife and his son. They were alive. They had only survived because of a bizarre, terrifying twist of fate. That morning, his wife had gone out to the local market specifically to find burn ointment for Yamaguchi's wounds from Hiroshima. While she was out, the bomb detonated. She and the baby had sought shelter in a tunnel, protecting them from the blast. If Yamaguchi had not been bombed in Hiroshima, his wife wouldn't have been out looking for medicine, and they would have been in the house when the Nagasaki bomb fell. The very bomb that nearly killed him in Hiroshima ended up saving his family in Nagasaki. In the days and weeks that followed, the true horror of the nuclear weapons became clear. The radiation sickness set in. Yamaguchi's hair fell out. His wounds wouldn't heal. He suffered from relentless vomiting and a skyrocketing fever. For weeks, he hovered on the absolute brink of death, living in a makeshift shelter made of scavenged wood. But slowly, impossibly, he recovered. Tsutomu Yamaguchi lived to see the rebuilding of Japan. He went back to work for Mitsubishi. He had 2 more daughters. For decades, he lived a quiet, normal life, refusing to speak publicly about what he had endured. He wanted to forget. He wanted to protect his children from the stigma associated with the hibakusha, the explosion-affected people. But as he grew older, and as the global nuclear arsenal swelled to tens of thousands of weapons, he realized he could no longer stay silent. He had a duty to the hundreds of thousands of people who had been incinerated in those 2 flashes of light. In his 80s, Yamaguchi began speaking out, writing books, and advocating tirelessly for global nuclear disarmament. In 2006, he traveled to the United Nations in New York to speak before a screening of a documentary about his life. He stood before the world and delivered a simple, harrowing message. Having experienced atomic bombings twice and survived, it is my destiny to talk about it. I can't understand why the world cannot understand the agony of the nuclear bombs. How can they keep developing these weapons? In 2009, the Japanese government officially recognized him as a Nijiu Hibakusha, a double survivor. He is the only person in history to be officially recognized by the government as having survived both the Hiroshima and Nagasaki bombings, although researchers believe there may have been around 160 others who experienced both. Tsutomu Yamaguchi passed away in 2010 at the age of 93. A man who was caught in the crosshairs of the two most destructive weapons ever deployed in human warfare and outlived the men who dropped them. His story is a terrifying reminder of the destructive power we hold in our hands, but is also a profound testament to the unbreakable, inexplicable resilience of the human spirit. The ability to endure the end of the world, dust yourself off, and somehow keep living. If this story of human survival left you completely speechless, make sure to hit that subscribe button, because next time we are exploring a mystery even darker than the shadows burned into the stone of Hiroshima. Until then, keep questioning everything.